The prospect of Abeloth returning during the reign of Darth Sidious opens a chilling and fascinating exploration into what happens when two of the most dangerous and malevolent forces in the galaxy come into contact. Abeloth, the manifestation of chaos and destruction from beyond the boundaries of mortal comprehension, would pose an existential threat even to a Sith Lord as cunning and powerful as Sidious. Her return in this era would fundamentally alter the trajectory of galactic history, possibly unraveling the very foundations of the Sith's meticulously constructed empire and the Force itself. Darth Sidious, also known as Emperor Palpatine, was unparalleled in his ambition and mastery of the dark side. His plan to dominate the galaxy was executed with near-perfect precision, culminating in the fall of the Jedi Order and the establishment of the Galactic Empire. Sidious thrived on control, manipulating pawns, puppeteering events, and enforcing order through fear. Abeloth, on the other hand, embodied the very antithesis of control: raw chaos, destruction, and the subversion of all stability. This fundamental difference in their natures would create a volatile clash, where even the dark side itself might find its balance upset. Abeloth's return would likely begin subtly, as it did in her original timeline. Her influence would seep into the galaxy through visions, madness, and strange phenomena. Her ability to corrupt individuals, turning them into unwitting servants, would pose an immediate threat to Sidious's authoritarian rule. Entire sectors of the Empire could fall prey to her manipulations, with governors, admirals, and even Sith acolytes succumbing to her will. This would not just be an ideological challenge, but a direct affront to Sidious's iron grip on the galaxy. The Dark Lord, who prided himself on his omniscience and control, would be faced with a force he could not fully understand or dominate. Sidious's first reaction would likely be one of intrigue mixed with disdain. He might view Abeloth as another anomaly to be subjugated, underestimating her power initially. However, as her reach expanded and reports of mass insanity, inexplicable events, and widespread rebellion began to mount, Sidious would realize the gravity of the situation. His own Force-sensitive agents, such as the Inquisitors, could be among the first to fall under Abeloth's sway, their loyalty to the dark side twisted into servitude to her incomprehensible power. The Jedi Purge, already a priority for the Emperor, would take on a new dimension as Sidious sought to uncover the source of this emerging threat. He would dispatch Darth Vader to investigate, a task the Sith apprentice would carry out with ruthless efficiency. Vader's hunt for Abeloth would be fraught with peril. While his power and rage might allow him to confront her directly, Abeloth's ability to exploit emotional weaknesses could turn even Vader into a pawn in her schemes. She might manipulate his lingering grief over Padmé's death, offering him illusions of her return, or exploit his internal conflict to sow discord between master and apprentice. Sidious himself, though immensely powerful, would find Abeloth a unique challenge. Her connection to the Ancient Ones, entities tied deeply to the Force's cosmic balance, places her beyond the realm of any conventional opponent he had faced. Sidious's vast knowledge of Sith lore and dark side rituals might give him a theoretical understanding of Abeloth, but her sheer unpredictability and ability to warp reality would render much of his cunning ineffective. Abeloth's power transcended the typical boundaries of the Force, delving into domains that neither Jedi nor Sith fully comprehended. Her nature as a being of chaos would challenge even the Emperor's deepest understanding of the Force. The galactic implications of Abeloth's return during this era would be staggering. The rebellion, still in its infancy, could find itself overshadowed or even co-opted by Abeloth's influence. Her ability to unite disparate factions under her thrall would create a force of destruction unparalleled in the galaxy. Meanwhile, the Empire's rigid structure, built on fear and obedience, might prove especially vulnerable to her corruption. Imperial officers and soldiers, already living under immense pressure, could be easily driven mad by her influence. Entire fleets could turn against one another as Abeloth sowed discord and chaos, unraveling Sidious's carefully constructed hierarchy. Sidious, however, would not go down without a fight. His obsession with power and immortality would likely drive him to seek ways to understand and potentially harness Abeloth's power for his own ends. He might explore ancient Sith artifacts or delve into forbidden rituals in an attempt to bind or control her essence. This pursuit, however, could backfire spectacularly. Abeloth's essence, fundamentally incompatible with the Sith's principles of order and control, would likely resist any attempt to be contained. Instead, Sidious might find himself inadvertently aiding her, unleashing even greater destruction upon the galaxy. The Sith philosophy, which emphasizes the individual's will to dominate and impose order, would clash irrevocably with Abeloth's nature. This tension might create unprecedented fractures within the Sith Order itself. Sidious's apprentices, agents, and allies could find themselves drawn to Abeloth's promises of freedom from his tyranny, creating a schism within the dark side. The delicate balance of power Sidious maintained through fear and manipulation could collapse under the strain, leaving the galaxy in an even greater state of turmoil. Should Abeloth's influence spread unchecked, the galaxy would face existential peril. The Force itself, already strained by Sidious's dark side domination, might reach a breaking point. Abeloth's return would likely escalate the cosmic struggle between light and dark, forcing unexpected alliances between the remnants of the Jedi and the forces of the Sith. Luke Skywalker, Leia Organa, and other key figures of the rebellion might find themselves caught in a battle, not just for the galaxy's political future, but for its very survival. Abeloth's nature as an ancient, almost primordial force of chaos would make her nearly impossible to defeat through conventional means. Sidious, for all his intellect and power, might come to realize that she could not be destroyed outright. This revelation would drive him to increasingly desperate measures, possibly endangering the galaxy even further in his attempt to rid himself of her influence. The Emperor, so accustomed to being the ultimate arbiter of the galaxy's fate, would be forced to confront his own limitations in the face of an opponent who defied all logic and understanding. The climactic confrontation between Sidious and Abeloth would be a spectacle of unparalleled magnitude. Sidious, wielding the full might of the dark side, would bring to bear every resource, ally, and weapon at his disposal. Yet Abeloth, with her ability to warp reality, corrupt minds, and defy the natural laws of the galaxy, would be an opponent unlike any other. The battle between these two titanic forces would devastate entire star systems, leaving scars on the Force itself. The inevitable confrontation between Darth Sidious and Abeloth would be a clash of ideologies as much as raw power. Sidious, driven by his unyielding belief in the supremacy of order through domination, would find himself facing a being whose very existence unraveled the foundations of his ideology. Abeloth's return would not merely challenge his power but threaten to upend the delicate balance that the dark side of the Force maintained under his rule. Her essence would ripple across the galaxy, disrupting even Sidious's most intricate plans and schemes. Abeloth's ability to manifest in multiple forms, often as a reflection of the innermost desires and fears of those she encountered, would grant her a significant psychological edge. Sidious, despite his outward confidence and seemingly impenetrable will, was not without vulnerabilities. His fear of death, his obsession with immortality, and his unquenchable thirst for ultimate knowledge of the dark side were facets of his character that Abeloth could exploit. She might present herself as an emissary of greater power, offering him access to dimensions of the Force he could scarcely imagine, only to ensnare him in her web of madness and chaos. The physical and spiritual devastation caused by Abeloth's spread across the galaxy would create a scenario where even Sidious's unmatched strategic mind might falter. Entire sectors of the Empire could devolve into chaos as Abeloth corrupted Imperial fleets, sowing dissent among officers and soldiers alike. The military backbone of the Galactic Empire, already stretched thin across countless star systems, would buckle under the pressure of Abeloth's machinations. The logistical infrastructure Sidious relied on to enforce his rule would crumble, giving rise to a state of anarchy that not even the iron grip of the Sith could suppress. The Jedi Purge, still ongoing under the Empire's reign, would take on a new urgency as the few remaining Jedi might recognize Abeloth's return as a dire threat to the Force itself. These surviving Jedi, despite their weakened numbers, would become critical players in the battle against Abeloth, driven not by rebellion against the Empire, but by the need to protect the Force from utter collapse. This unexpected alignment of Jedi and Sith against a common enemy would mark a moment of unprecedented tension and uncertainty in galactic history. The lines between ally and adversary would blur, with long-standing enmities temporarily set aside to confront the overwhelming threat. Darth Vader's role in this scenario would be particularly complex. As Sidious's apprentice and enforcer, he would be at the forefront of efforts to subdue or destroy Abeloth. However, Abeloth's uncanny ability to exploit emotional wounds and inner conflict could test even Vader's formidable resolve. The lingering pain of his transformation into a Sith Lord, the unresolved guilt over Padmé's death, and the fragmented remnants of Anakin Skywalker's identity would make him uniquely vulnerable to Abeloth's manipulations. She might tempt him with visions of redemption or reunion with his lost loved ones, further fracturing his loyalty to Sidious. Sidious, recognizing the immense threat Abeloth posed, would undoubtedly resort to the darkest and most forbidden aspects of Sith alchemy and sorcery to combat her. His quest for power and immortality had already led him to uncover ancient Sith secrets, and Abeloth's return would push him to delve even deeper into the occult. These efforts might include attempts to summon the spirits of ancient Sith lords, channeling their knowledge to devise a means of containing or destroying Abeloth. Yet, such efforts would come with immense risks. Abeloth's nature as a being of chaos meant that any attempt to control or bind her power could backfire catastrophically, potentially accelerating her domination of the galaxy. The political ramifications of Abeloth's return would also be profound. The rebellion, still in its early stages, would likely find itself caught in the crossfire between the Empire and Abeloth's forces. Some rebel factions, desperate for an advantage against the Empire, might even consider allying with Abeloth, unaware of the true nature of the chaos she represented. Such alliances would be short-lived, as Abeloth's influence inevitably turned her allies into thralls or drove them to madness. The rebel alliance, already fragile and divided, might fracture entirely under the weight of Abeloth's corruption, leaving the galaxy devoid of any meaningful resistance against her power. As the conflict escalated, the Force itself would bear the scars of the struggle. Abeloth's presence was known to disrupt the natural flow of the Force, creating disturbances that could be felt across time and space. The balance of the Force, already precariously tipped toward the dark side under Sidious's reign, would be thrown into further disarray. The Jedi and Sith alike would find their connection to the Force strained and distorted, with even the most powerful Force users struggling to maintain their equilibrium. The ripple effects of this disruption would be felt not only by individuals but by the galaxy at large, as the interconnectedness of all living things was destabilized. Ultimately, the question of whether Sidious could defeat Abeloth remains a deeply uncertain one. Sidious, for all his power, was fundamentally a mortal being, reliant on his mastery of the dark side to achieve his goals. Abeloth, by contrast, was a near-immortal being whose existence transcended the conventional boundaries of life and death. Even if Sidious were to devise a method to banish or contain her, the cost would be astronomical. Entire star systems might be sacrificed, and the dark side itself could be irreparably altered by the confrontation. In seeking to preserve his empire, Sidious might inadvertently unleash forces even he could not control, setting the galaxy on a path of eternal chaos and destruction. In the end, Abeloth's return during the reign of Darth Sidious would represent a cosmic tipping point, where the galaxy's fate hung in the balance between two opposing forces of unparalleled power. It would be a conflict of unimaginable scale, reshaping the galaxy and the Force itself in ways that would echo for millennia. Abeloth's chaotic nature and Sidious's insatiable desire for control would collide in a battle that transcended mere politics or warfare, striking at the very essence of what it meant to exist in a galaxy bound by the Force.